Hey everyone. So I was on one of my walks, and my walks, I take many walks a day now that it's great weather here in Canada. And my walks are always kind of, depends on the day and what I'm feeling, but sometimes it is a walk of expressing immense anger that's coming up, resentment, and every person that walks by me, I express things obviously, silently to myself. Other times when there isn't as much emotion coming up, it becomes just self-inquiry, just a conversation that illuminates things that maybe I'm not seeing as clearly, and the conversation is always in the direction of being as honest as I possibly can with myself. And so the topic that I just thought of that I wanted to record immediately is being brutally honest. What does that mean exactly? Because it is so crucial to go in the direction of freedom, right? Freedom from suffering. This brutal honesty, it reminds me of another, what was the phrase? Let me see if I can remember. Basically, it's like how you will truly progress towards less suffering is if you are willing to be proven wrong again and again and again. And basically, if you continue to be open to being proven wrong again and again, you will not stop progressing. You will not stop seeing more and more of your pain, right? Because I was thinking of this. What does it mean exactly to be proven wrong again and again? Well, you can think of many different things like, oh, I'm not doing the right thing. But I think the ultimate example of being proven wrong is willing to see that you are overestimating where you are on the path. You are trying to believe that you have gone deeper than you have, that you are more free than you actually are. And this is very painful for the ego, because wherever you are, the ego wants to say, you've gone extremely deep. And then if you even see something that maybe shows you that you actually haven't gone as deep as you think, there's a moment where there's a little friction, because the ego doesn't want you to see that, because it actually wants you to stop looking, stop investigating, stop trying to go deeper, stop trying to be honest, because if you do that, then the ego stays, the rest of the ego that's in the psyche stays intact. And so I think this is like really, really fascinating, because this is sort of the most important thing if you are on the spiritual path towards freedom from emotional suffering, mental suffering. There's nothing more important than trying your best to be brutally honest with yourself. And so, as I was just walking, I was saying to myself, trying to be as objective as I can be. And I said, on the one hand, right, let me try to validate everything that I've gone through. And I said to myself, if I compare where I started from, not even knowing what boundaries are, people disrespecting me left and right, being utterly suppressed and not even knowing that I was suppressed. There was no anger in my experience. There was no crying. There was nothing. There was just suppression, suppression, suppression. And so, and many other things. And so from that to where I am now, I said to myself, the transformation is enormous. More than I could have ever imagined. The ability for me to be with myself, no matter how big the pain is, no matter how vile the images and scenes and things that I see in my mind, I've gotten to the stage where there is unconditional love, and I'm not looking away from anything. In fact, I'm very curious, and I want to see and see and see. Show me more. Is there something more? Is there something scarier? Is there something even more disgusting? And so that's the first part where I try to validate myself. I've come so far in that sense, more than I could have ever imagined. However, coming back to the topic of this video, I always try to be as brutally honest as I can with myself, and I want to be proven wrong, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable. And so I was saying to myself, I've come so far, but in the name of being brutally honest, I can also see that there's still so much conditioning in me, so much ego. And like I said, I don't judge any of it anymore. It's very easy for me to express myself when I'm alone, no matter how evil the thought is, no matter how, sexual perversions, no matter what it is, it's very easy for me now. The resistance to that stuff is like almost zero. However, when I am as honest as I can be, I have deep trauma with women. And so my insecurities when I'm around women, and I'm not even talking to them, just walking past them, the more beautiful that they are, how it goes, the more uncomfortable I feel. And so if I'm walking around here, which today I'm feeling very empty, and so I'm just enjoying the senses, it's so intense, right? To the ego says, wow, you're so enlightened. But then all it takes is maybe a beautiful woman passing by me, and I feel all of this immense discomfort, contraction. And so if I'm lying to myself and I just want to keep focusing on the emptiness and how intense my vision is and how enlightened this feels, well then all of that is ignored and you're not really seeing where you actually are, right? And this is just one aspect. There are many different aspects that I can see of myself where there is so much conditioning. Remember, conditioning means a conditioned response in the mind and in the body, right? And so I could be talking to someone and I share something and I'm talking and then I'm finally done talking, and I'll notice that I feel like the other person, which is a clear projection, when I'm done talking, like, oh my God, they think I'm so stupid. I just repeated myself again, like, how pathetic can you be? So these sorts of conditionings, right? There's so much of that. And so I just wanted to make this video because I think it can be so useful to hear this, right? The depth of being honest is almost infinite. Like, people think they're being honest, but then if you actually are open and you're kind of, living your life, and you might see something in someone and then you see something you didn't see, or maybe the depth is a little bit more, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't see this about myself, right? And it's always disappointing to the ego. Oh, I'm not as empty as I thought of suffering. There's so much. And so that's what I wanted to share in this video, that your willingness to be proven wrong again and again is what allows you to see what's inside of you. Be honest about it. It's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it can be hell to see this stuff. There's going to be a lot of anger, a lot of tears, sometimes fear when you see this stuff. But the three things that I said there, all of that emotional energy that arises in your nervous system, that is what needs to be seen, experienced, and released, right? And you can't do that if you're lying to yourself, like I just said, right? A lot of people do this. They're having the experience of what people call self-realization, and so it may feel very enlightened, right? It feels so different than how you used to experience everything. And they want to cling to that so hard that they're not even looking for maybe a sign that they're not as enlightened as they think they are. And so when you're not even looking, it sort of becomes dormant, right? This is very interesting to me. It becomes dormant, and so what I just described, a woman passing by and me feeling extremely uncomfortable, that's not dormant in me because I'm so honest about it. For other people, if they're not even looking and they're just attached to emptiness all the time, it becomes very dormant, and then it creates an even bigger illusion that you're more empty of pain than you actually are. And so, yeah, this is one of the big things on this path is, if you're willing to be proven wrong again and again and again, you will keep moving towards true liberation, right? It always feels bad, right? For me, it's mild, but it's still uncomfortable when I see, like I did today, like, you're not as empty as you think you are. I am having a magnificent experience compared to how I used to be. So compared to how I used to be at my worst, it's like I'm completely enlightened compared to that. But when I'm as honest as I can be, open to seeing anything, I see my insecurities all the time. I see I went on this trip, and there was so much ego that was being triggered in my experience that it essentially ruined the trip. That's kind of what the ego is, right? As long as it's there, it is in the way of you just seeing reality as it is. And so there was so much insisting that things go my way, and then they don't, and so much anger, so much. Then there was moments of depression and feeling so low. There were moments when I'm trying to remember, insisting, not going with the flow, if you want to call it that, which is sort of the same thing, I guess. It's just like, I don't want this, I don't want that, that's wrong, it should be this way, right? And there was so much of this, so much misery. Physically speaking, the trip, I went to places with beautiful mountains and stuff like that. If there wasn't all of that suffering, it would have been wonderful. One funny thing I want to share is that here in Canada, there are these wildfires, huge wildfires creating smoke, right? And sometimes there's so much smoke that when I went to this place where these beautiful mountains, it was actually obscuring the mountains and the lakes and everything, so it kind of ruined it. If I wasn't being triggered all the time and all this pain coming up, even in those circumstances, I would have been perfectly peaceful and happy. But instead I was miserable, and I did my best to, face all of that and release it by crying. One good thing is that although I was so miserable so often, I was glad to see that I could be honest, face it, release it with lots of crying, and then it would be gone instantly. So it was very, very heavy. 3 or 4 times I felt like I wanted to die, kind of like suicidal ideation. But at this point, when I cry very, very deeply and I express everything that the pain is saying in my mind, which intensifies the pain, when I release it, it's gone very, very quickly. It wasn't like this before. The further back in time, the more that the suffering would kind of stay with me, even after crying. So this shows you the sort of progress that you can experience on this path. The ego just doesn't want to feel anything, right? So it would say the only thing that's good is just not feeling anything. But that's a huge amount of progress compared to before, when I would stay depressed for an hour, right? And it couldn't really move through me. It took a long time. And so now it moves very quickly. But there's still so much ego and conditioning. And I want to remind you again, this is something kind of important to see, that if people are not being honest with themselves about how much conditioning they still have, how much emotional pain they still have, that dormant thing happens, right? And what I'm basically trying to show you is how deceptive the mind can be, even kind of comparing one person to the other. So for example, when I share this stuff, it's difficult because you're not having the experience that I'm having when I'm having lots of pain come up. It's both difficult and also very easy for me because it doesn't feel like me anymore, right? I'm not identified with the ego anymore. And so if you hear me talk about how I'm sobbing and I'm resisting and I'm all this stuff, most people would think, oh, this guy is at the beginning because he's still suffering. No. If I stopped looking at my pain, which I can't because I'm just brutally honest all the time, it would become dormant and more dormant. I've seen this already happening. Like the last few days, there was a whole lot of purging and releasing, and then it starts to close, and then it becomes very, 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 very mild, and there's so much peace, and the senses become, much more intense. If I just stayed here, like a lot of people, I would think, wow, I'm almost like empty. There's almost no ego. That's because it's become dormant, right? I've released so much that if I don't go looking for it, if I don't take, some psychedelics or some edible THC, it will not come up very powerfully. It still does though, because I'm just brutally honest. Like if there's a little bit of anger, I give it my attention. Even if I'm feeling like 99% empty, I just have this obsession because I suppressed my anger so completely that I have this undying hunger to see all of it, right? So yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to share. That if people are not being honest with themselves, the pain becomes dormant, and your experience, and it's very convincing, becomes very, very peaceful, but it doesn't mean that your psyche is empty, right? It's not empty. It could be like 90% of your conditioning and your pain is still there, but it's become dormant because you're not looking for it, you're not trying to be honest, you maybe just want to be in comfort, right? Which would be okay too, but I'm just sharing this to kind of illuminate things that maybe are not so clear for people that do want to go deeper, that want to be honest with themselves, right? Remember that being truly honest with yourself and being willing to be proven wrong again and again will always come with pain, will always come with discomfort. The ego never wants you to see that you haven't gone as deep as you actually have, right? It's always painful. But if you're willing to go through that discomfort of seeing, oh man, there's much more than I thought, then you are progressing. You are shedding more and more pain. Without being honest, then there's no movement, right? So that's it. Thank you so much for listening.